Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for today's training. We'll be focusing on LinkPoint Connect Cloud Edition. Before I get started, I do want to point out that some of the items you will see today as I demonstrate the software may look a little different in your instance which you have access to. The reason for this is some customers choose to alter settings or available sync options, either by using defaults or by disabling settings altogether. You may see fewer options and settings or see specific Salesforce objects and email domains that are unique to your organization. If what you see varies a bit from what you see today on my screen, this just means your setup has been customized to meet your workflow needs. So let's get started with the training. LinkPoint Connect Cloud Edition is designed to make it easier for users to work between Microsoft Exchange and Salesforce. And one of the first things you will notice here is that I'm in the web browser. Cloud Edition is a server-side solution hosted by LinkPoint 360 and made accessible to customers wherever they have access to the internet to manage their account or establish sync settings. We'll go into more detail throughout the training, but since this is a server-side integration, the system will sync data wherever users have access to their Exchange and Salesforce accounts. So it doesn't matter if you have users working on PCs, Macs, mobile devices, or even a mix of all three. There is also nothing to install, which simplifies user management quite a bit. The setup process for Cloud Edition is fairly straightforward. If you don't already have an account, you'll want your designated internal admin to set up an account using the registration form. I'm actually going to show you first what the account setup process is like for new users. This is the same whether you are purchasing Cloud Edition or just looking to set up a free trial. So you'll go to the top here and you'll click the register link, and it'll take you to the registration page. And you can see I'm on the form here, and I've already filled this out just to cut down on time. So you'll fill this out according to your company and go ahead and click sign up. Now this is going to create a new test user for me today to demonstrate. So then we're going to check the email account for the confirmation email. So if we go ahead into the email, we can see that this has come through, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to click the link to confirm the account. And what this will do is bring us to the setup wizard. Now we're going to go ahead and fill out the setup wizard, and it's pretty straightforward. The first section here that you're seeing is going to be the password for this user's Cloud Edition access. So this can be anything that you want it to be. Just make sure that you remember it or make a note of it somewhere. The second step is going to be configuring everything for Salesforce. So again, this is usually fairly straightforward. There are some additional options here, depending on whether or not you're trialing and you want to run this against Sandbox, or if you're using a custom URL to access Salesforce, you can enter that information. For many users, the standard login URL works great. So you'll just make your selection and then click connect. We'll go ahead and connect to Salesforce, and you can see here that it's going to ask me for access for our application to my Salesforce account, or to, in this case, Joe Byrne's Salesforce account. So we'll go ahead and allow that. And now you can see I have a connection and a status of ready. So that's exactly what we needed. The last step here is going to be to connect my Exchange account. And again, you'll see that there are two options. If you're using Office 365, you have access to that. If you're using a hosted Exchange, some folks are running Exchange 2013 or 16 local, or you're hosting it on your own, your users can go ahead and enter their username and password. There are some advanced options if those do apply to your setup. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to a LinkPoint 360 support representative to make sure that your configuration works the way you need. For today, I believe that Joe is going to be a 365 user. So we're going to go ahead and connect that. And the reason you saw nothing pop up is he's already logged into his email in another tab here. So I didn't have to go in and re-log in. If I wasn't logged in already, I would have to just enter my username and password. It's as simple as that. Now let's go ahead and click the My Settings button in the bottom right corner, and that will bring us out of this wizard and into the main site. Now, what you're seeing here with my test user is the admin view of the system. Once you have your account completely set up, New end users that you add to the system will only need to click a link in their email and then follow that same wizard, very similar to what I just did for Joe Burns. All users for a company will stay in one account, so you only need to do that registration form and registration process one time. So here I am, again, as I said, with an admin view, and I know that I have an admin view, not just because I'm the first person to create my account, not just because I have a profile or admin of here noting my level of access, but the first signifier really is the navigation up here. So end users who log into the system will only see a home option and a my settings option. When you're an admin, you have access to different levels of what we term as the hierarchy, so you can do different things for user management. I'm going to start with the core functionality of the system, which is generally the same for admins and end users, and then we can circle back to more of the admin functionality, which includes importing users, viewing the dashboard, and user reports. So if you're not on the My Settings page and you're following along, you'll want to go ahead and click this option. And what you're going to see here are three main sections. The first one is going to reflect the information that you entered into the form when you registered, or if you're an end user, the information relevant to you, your contact, and your account. The second section here is what we call the hosts, and that's our Salesforce and Exchange connection. Because I already completed this as part of the wizard, you can see I have a status of ready, I have the usernames populated. If I ever have an issue where one of these becomes disconnected, let's go ahead and do that just to show you what that looks like. You'll see a big red X here. Now, if you have one or more hosts disconnected, even if you have a sync job set up, it will not run. And that's because for some reason or another, maybe a password changed, maybe there was an outage on one of the servers, or Salesforce is down momentarily. For whatever reason, if we have lost that connection, we're not able to run the sync successfully. So you'll need to come back in here and make sure that you connect. And we do send out an email to users if we lose that Salesforce connection or the Exchange connection, to notify them and let them know you've lost a connection. We want to make sure that you're aware of this and can go back right into the system to re-enter those credentials. So as I was explaining, I very quickly reconnected to Salesforce, and now everything is ready to go. The bottom here with the sync jobs is really the core functionality of the system. This is where you're going to go for 99% of the configuration. If you're an admin, just keep in mind when we look later at how to do this at different levels, the settings look very similar. And let's start with email sync, because that one seems to be the most popular. When you create an account with us and you add users, by default, all of the sync jobs will be disabled. Now again, admins have the ability, and we'll take a look at that, to pre-configure, lock, and enable sync jobs ahead of time. So there are some instances where a new user or an end user will come in, they'll connect their hosts, and they'll see these sync jobs already checked with and enabled. And the sync job will run as soon as the next scheduled sync comes around. So likely you'll see this as it's not enabled, but in some cases you may. In either event, if you need to edit or turn on a sync, you'll click the edit option here. And this is our sync settings screen. The top section that we're going to start in with these radio buttons are what we term our modes. So first things you have to do is pick how you want your emails to sync. And we have two main options, three if you count the fact that it's off by default to start with. The option to attempt to sync all emails will essentially run a sync against your email account, and every time the sync runs, it will check for new emails. And if it finds a match, it will record the email to a matching contact or lead record in Salesforce. If it doesn't find a match, then it will not sync the email. This is great for companies who want sort of a set and forget approach to their email recording. It's great for compliance because it captures every interaction, both in and out, inbound, outbound emails. Some companies think that this is a bit much and they want to select the emails that get recorded to Salesforce. Now this does take an extra step by the end user for this to occur, but this is our designate mode. So if you only want certain emails to be recorded, then you can certainly set the system up to do it that way. Once you've selected your mode, the remainder of the settings are very straightforward, and I highly recommend in most cases that users or customers leave most of the default settings as the defaults. So the sync is set to run during the week between regular work hours. Of course, if you come in a little earlier or leave a little later, you can certainly adjust that. Not selecting the weekends doesn't mean we won't sync emails you send on the weekend if you're working a little bit overtime. What this means is the sync engine just will not check for emails until Monday at 8 a.m. in this case. So if you need or want the sync to run over the weekend, you can certainly do that. We just recommend for performance purposes that we leave it at the default. The folder section here, what this is going to tell us is which folders in Exchange we should be looking for emails in. The default is inbox and sent. This means we're going to check all inbound and all outbound emails. We recommend, again, that customers leave this setting as is, but if you would like to only sync emails in certain folders, and I've clicked in this box, this will present to each user his or her own folders from Exchange, and you can choose, we could certainly do this, only sync the emails that I put in this one folder. So that again takes end user action. You're going to have to put the email or move the email to a particular folder. Some organizations will select attempt to sync all emails, but specify a folder. So they just move the emails into a folder and the system will sync everything they put in there. So it's sort of a different way to designate, as it were. I'm going to set this back. Down here we have type. So again, you don't have to set this, you certainly can. Some organizations want different activities that get added to the activity history in Salesforce to be termed or logged or recorded with a certain type. Your drop-down list will match your type field options. Mine are unique to my setup, so of course in my case, email makes the most sense on email sync. We do include the ability to record attachments. You can set this to record all attachments. Again, we recommend mainly for the sake of your Salesforce storage that you don't check that box, but if you need to for compliance purposes, you absolutely have that option. And you'll see in a little bit, there is a way to exclude attachments as well. So you can certainly turn this on, and then I'll show you how to exclude files maybe based on name or on file type or extension. This last option here, and again, we recommend you leave this on. You can certainly disable it if you need to. Tells our system to look for matching records in Salesforce on all available email type fields. So you may have a single contact, but they may have multiple email addresses. And if the person corresponds with you regularly from various email addresses, what this setting does is make sure that no matter where they email you from, we will match the email back to the correct Salesforce record. Now I'm going to actually go ahead and enable this, and to enable, you just click Save. And now I can go ahead and close this, and you'll see now I have an enabled checkbox and I have a sync frequency populated, which is just summarizing for me a few of the settings that I just picked in the email sync. Now, as I mentioned, the system is only going to sync automatically emails for which I have a matching contact or lead record. So while I don't have any data, I am going to actually click the sync history button here because I want to show you this screen, and use your imagination with me for a second because I know I don't have any data here, but I think that this is important to talk about for a second. Emails that don't have a matching contact or lead in Salesforce are going to appear here. And this is a great way to see unresolved emails or emails that didn't have a match, and you can actually see all the information about them, and you'll get shortcut links to actually create those records in Salesforce. What I think is great about it is if you've gone back and forth with someone a few times and forgotten to create their lead record, you can create the lead record and then forget about it. The next time that the sync runs, we're actually going to see that you've gone ahead and created that, and then we'll go ahead and sync all of those emails that appeared here, and we'll remove them from this unresolved tab because they're no longer unresolved, and we'll list them in the synced tab. So again, I have no data here, but what the synced tab will do is give you an audit history of everything our system has processed for you. And there's also a link that you can click to go see the item in your Salesforce. Excluded emails is just another place to see items that did not sync, and this is typically because you've placed something on the ignore list or you've used one of our other exclusion techniques to exclude the email. So again, this is meant to be a cleanup screen. It's meant to help you understand how your data is moving. The primary benefit most customers see from this is to actually see which emails are not making it to Salesforce and why, and then the opportunity to update the CRM so that our system can then go back and move the content back into the CRM. This last tab, and again, since I have no data, it's a little bit hard, just takes all the email addresses for emails that were unresolved and groups them here. So the first tab is going to give you maybe 12 emails you sent back and forth with the same lead, even if you didn't create that lead. This screen will list that lead or that person's email address once, and it'll give you the option to either ignore them, maybe it's not pertinent anymore, maybe it's not really a lead and it's spam, or again, you'll have icons over here to create. Now let's go back and talk smart address, because all of the things I've mentioned about the email sync have been about matching automatically to contacts and leads. But one of the biggest questions I get from folks is, how do I record an email back to an opportunity or an account or my custom object in Salesforce? And that's with this smart address option. And when you're enabling this, you first need to go to the Map Objects screen. Smart addresses are unique email addresses that Cloud Edition will create for you for each end user and unique to each user for the objects that you specify. So as you can see here, by default, I have accounts and I have opportunities. Let's say I don't work with accounts. I can simply go into Edit and I can disable that object because there's no need for smart addresses that are not relevant. The second thing you can see is that for the objects that we do keep, and let's work with opportunities, I can choose to work with what we're terming different criteria or a view. By default, we're going to pull down and create smart addresses for you for all opportunities that are owned by that user and that are open. So if you've closed opportunities, you're not going to get a smart address for that. If you want to change the filtering, you have a custom idea of which opportunities you want access to, or if you're an admin, which opportunities you want all of your team members to have access to, you can go into Edit and you can actually select a Salesforce view, and that's going to be in this list. Now I'm going to show you this list here. I'm going to switch to Salesforce. Actually matches the list of views I have available to me as a user in Salesforce. So what's great about this is you can create a custom view, and I've done that here, and you can call it anything you want. Mine's Smart Address Opportunities, and it will reflect the settings or the filtering that you apply. In this case, I'm pulling all of the opportunities where the account name starts with the letter G, just for demo purposes. Yours will likely be based on a number of factors relevant to your workflow. So with this view created and accessible, when I'm back in here, I can simply pick that view as an option to me. And when I click Save, our system will now know what criteria to use to bring down the most relevant records for that object type. You will have access, or your users will have access to all of the objects they have available in Salesforce. My test user has a few here, and one looks like it's even custom, so that's good. And you can configure this to work exactly how you're going to need. Now for my demo purpose today, let's go ahead and say I only want to work with those opportunities. So let's go back. The last step is to actually enable Smart Address. So we'll go into this Edit option. We'll turn it on. You can adjust the sync frequency. The sync is designed to run once a day. That way it can check for new items that do or do not meet the criteria for your smart addresses. It's self-cleansing, so opportunities in my case that no longer are relevant or new opportunities that I own that meet that criteria that I created are going to come in and be managed for me, so I don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to stick with the defaults. And we'll click Save, and what the system is going to do is it's actually going to begin by querying Salesforce to create those records for me. Now you can see already in the background, my email sync has run, and it'll run every hour at that interval for me in the meantime. Now, Let's take a look at how to actually work with smart addresses, and mine should populate momentarily. I'm going to demonstrate this from webmail. It works very similarly if you're working in desktop Outlook. It also works similar if you're on a mobile device. So whether you're using Outlook on your iPhone, whether you're on an Android phone, or whether you're even using the native Apple Mail app, the system generates those contacts or those smart addresses and places them everywhere you have access to your Exchange account. When you're on a phone, they're going to appear as contacts, so they may be commingled in with actual people. So you'll have your contacts listed in with those smart addresses. I believe you may be able to folder those or move them around if that's a little bit clumsy for you to work with. But what you're going to see here when I pull up my contacts is I now have a smart address folder here. And when I pull this up, once my sync runs, I'm going to see my smart addresses available to me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to refresh this tab just to pull those smart addresses in. And now you can see that in my Exchange, in my contacts section, I now have contacts in a smart address folder. And you can see instead of names of people, they're actually the names of those opportunities. So these are now available to me to use for smart addressing. Now, how do they actually work? Well, they're pretty straightforward. You can do it a number of ways. If we go to a new email, and let's say I'm going to email a contact. So Fred is my prospect, he's my client, he's in my Salesforce. And I want to make sure that this is not just tagged back automatically by my system, which it typically would be, to Fred's contact record, but I also want this to go to a particular opportunity. I can use the BCC field and actually type in the name of an opportunity. So in this case, I'm pulling in one that I already had in my history. I can also use the address book to find the correct smart address to use to tag back. This works seamlessly when you're doing this on a mobile device. If you just start typing in the name of the op or the name of the account or the case or so forth, it should autocomplete for you exactly the thing to fill in here. Outlook typically also will cache smart addresses for you, so once you find one, it's really simple to just sort of autocomplete and select. That's everything there is to it. I can simply go ahead and send this. And the next time that the sync runs, we'll actually see that showing up in the sync history within Cloud Edition as a synced email. That's how you would tag an email back to the system to actually tell us to relate it to an additional record type other than just a contact or a lead. Now, a few other things you'll see in the Smart Address folder. You can always tell our system to not record something. So if you are using the option to always sync all emails all of the time, and you have an email that you just don't need to send back to the CRM, maybe it's one of those thank you, no thank you type emails, you can add in the BCC, just start typing do not record. That's a smart tag. And what that does is tell our system, even though we found a match, we do not want to record this email. If you have attachment recording on by default and you are sending something out that you send out all day long, maybe it's a product brochure and you're attaching this to the email and you want the email recorded because you want to have proof that you sent something out to a lead, but you don't need to record the attachment because it's something you have on file and wouldn't need hundreds of copies of, you can add this do not record attachments smart tag, and again, just start typing, they pop up automatically, and we won't record that attachment on that email. Conversely, if you don't have attachment recording on, you want to be very selective of when attachments even make it into Salesforce, but this one attachment is a signed contract and you need that to get back into Salesforce, simply start typing record attachments. That's a smart tag that will tell our system in this particular use case, absolutely record that attachment back when you're recording the email. And our last one here is the smart record. So again, if you have the designate mode enabled, so you're only selectively recording emails, the best way or the easiest way to do this across Outlook, across Apple Mail, all the different places you may have access to Exchange, is to simply start typing smart into that BCC. You're going to autocomplete our smart record tag. So that's a simple way to one-off tag emails to be recorded back to the CRM. Now I'm going to go back into Cloud Edition and I'm going to just refresh this so we're working with the most current version of the screen. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time, although a little bit less than I did on email, talking about the calendar, contact, and task sync. And the reason why these take a little less of our time today is you'll notice the screens are very similar. So for calendar sync, you can see I actually have 3 options instead of the 2 I had with email sync. You can choose to sync everything on your calendar. So just let the sync run and whatever's on your calendar will go over. Now that does exclude private items. So if you mark things private, we're never going to pick those up, and that works both in Exchange and in Salesforce. You can choose the bottom option here to sync calendar items only when you designate them. So very similar to email, if I want to put a little smart record tag on the invite itself, our system will know this is the one instance, or in this instance, to go ahead and sync that calendar item. The one that's a little bit different but seems to be fairly popular with customers is this middle one here, where our system will go ahead and try to sync calendar items where there's a matching record. So for example, internal appointments or reminders to myself or things with colleagues where there is no one outside or from a different domain or who isn't in my Salesforce, those won't sync. So it keeps your calendar a bit tidy. But if I'm setting appointments or trainings or demos or what have you with clients, with prospects, and those people exist in Salesforce, then our system will find that match and will sync it. So you'll have relevant appointments recorded back to Salesforce based on Salesforce data. So again, it just depends on your workflow and also on your reporting needs, depending on how you're working with Salesforce events. So you'll select a mode. Again, with the sync frequency, you can go ahead and set that the way that you need. You'll see we have this additional option here for how many days past and in the future our sync should be picking up appointments or meetings with for you. So it'll always be rolling. So from when you turn this on, it'll always have by default 90 days of future items. But you can adjust this as needed, and you'll see here throughout the system, evaluation users have some limitations, but once you're on board, those go away. Now we have a prevent operations section, and what this will do is allow you to specify whether the sync should be one-way or bidirectional. Now we didn't have that with email because emails are typically just Exchange up to Salesforce. But when you're working with a calendar, when you're working with tasks and contacts, as you'll see in a moment, you can choose whether or not you want it to be one way and in which way you want it to go. If you check nothing, it's a bidirectional sync. So if I leave this alone, anything I do in Exchange or Salesforce will then be mirrored in the opposite system. If I do not want to create items, update items, or delete items from Salesforce, I can check the first 3 options. More than likely, when customers choose a one-way sync, they go with the bottom 3. So they want to preserve Exchange as the master record, so they don't want sort of miscellaneous items that may get created in Salesforce to make it down to Exchange and clutter their calendar. Or most importantly, they don't want items to get deleted from their Exchange. So if someone inadvertently deletes an event in Salesforce, you don't want that coming off of your actual Outlook calendar, Exchange calendar, and then you miss an appointment with someone. So you have full say over how you want that to move. Again, calendar, you can pick a calendar. For demo purposes, I only have 2 here, one more helpful than the other. It is a one-to-one sync, so you have to pick one calendar. You can't really toggle between them. Again, record type supported, so you can choose based off of what fits your workflow. And we do support syncing invitees to Salesforce, so you can select this checkbox. It's off by default, but if you work with or off of or report on invitees in Salesforce, whoever you address the email to in Exchange will sync up to Salesforce and so forth. This last option down here, the conflict management, we usually just leave with the default settings so that you always have Exchange as the master record. And again, you can also choose to match against secondary email addresses. So usually not too much change again on this screen. Stick with the defaults, it's likely to work, but definitely take the time to review, make sure it meets your needs, especially if you're not looking for a bidirectional sync. So I will enable this by clicking Save. And very quickly, I will just demonstrate that the task sync screen looks extremely similar. So same thing. If you want your to-dos or your tasks from one system or the other to sync, you can absolutely go ahead and select those options. Just showing you here that the screen settings are essentially the same as you saw for calendar. And for contact sync, fairly similar. By default, we sync all contacts that the end user owns in Salesforce. Sometimes that can be a large number, so we recommend making sure that you know what you own, how many you own, and how that may impact you. Contacts will sync to Exchange. As a reminder, Exchange by itself will sync your contacts to wherever you have access to your Exchange account based on the settings you've established for your Exchange account. And that's a little bit outside of Cloud Edition, but I like to point that out because if you have thousands of contacts that you own and you enable this, they will make it to your mobile device. So your phone may end up with thousands of Salesforce contacts in it, which when the sync is running may slow things down a little bit, may affect your data charges depending on what your phone bill looks like. So it's just good to know going in. We do offer contact sync filters. So if you would like to, or you would like your team to sync contacts based on specific filters or parameters, you can let your account executive know, and our team on the professional services side can go in and actually build a filter so that you end up with a specific subset of contacts that are a little bit more workable or refined. And that is the basic sync functionality. I've talked a lot about all the things that you can do, things that do automatically run. Now I'm going to take a moment and just show you the items that do not automatically run. And the first way to do that is with this Ignore Emails button. So we'll go ahead and click that. And what this does is it gives you a spot to just kind of keep your data clean again, because I showed you that sync history screen where you can see items that sync or didn't sync, and sometimes they don't sync because it's a domain that just is irrelevant to your business. We all get a lot of spam email systems that don't necessarily need to be contacts or leads. My favorite is I get a lot of emails from United. I travel for work. I'm going to get those emails. I do not need to create a contact or a lead for anyone at United currently. So the way to keep my unresolved tab for email sync or even for calendar is to go ahead and make sure that our system is told when you receive something from united.com, you can go ahead and disregard that. So I would click Save. Emails then that meet that criteria, you'll see them in your sync history on the excluded tab. So we're not completely ignoring them. You'll see them listed. It just gives you an understanding of why they're excluded. You can also put other domains. If your company has more than one domain, you can see that by default the one you use to sign up is listed. But if you operate under a couple different domains, depending on your business model, you can certainly add those. You can add exact users. So if I want to exclude someone in particular, I can say I never need to sync an email from this person. So you can go through and maintain this. I'll show you in a few moments from the admin perspective. You can maintain this list at a higher level in the org to help keep data across the board and across Salesforce clean, so you don't have to worry about that. And then end users can always tack on those extras depending on the types of communication that they receive. So let's go back and I'll show you the other ignore option that I referred to, and this had to do with running through attachments. So again, you can choose to automatically record attachments when you're syncing emails. You can choose to one-off opt-in to record attachments as I showed you. But globally, we have this option to ignore files. And this is pre-populated by default with a handful of file extensions that the LinkPoint 360 team deemed worthy of exclusion based on spam, based on common best practices. You can see sort of things that typically look like they could be a virus. A good use case I always recommend to people, you can exclude those PNG or JPEGs that are always those Twitter or LinkedIn icons that are coming through. If you have the same brochure that you're always sending out to people, you can list that here in full. Check the box to do not sync, click Save, and you'll see that we've added them. They're here at the bottom. so that for this user, you can actually set it to record all attachments, but JPEGs, PNGs, and this particular file will never be recorded. So it's a great way to sort of turn one option on and then apply some filtering. And again, admins, you'll have access to a place in the system where you can manage this at a higher level. So if you have certain business practices that you need to enforce for security purposes, you can go in here and you can add what you need to as well. So that's the core functionality for the sync. Again, you have access to your sync histories here. You have it for calendar, you'll see it for contact and tasks, so you can always see what our system has processed, which items we found a match for, which items did not sync. Nightly, our system will also send an email to each end user with a summary of what did sync and what did not sync. So it prompts them to check out their sync histories on a daily basis and to do any of that data cleanup or adding of contacts that they may find helpful to their workflow. Certainly not a requirement, and you can always come in here, click Edit, and disable those reports if you do not want to receive those reports. So that's the sync functionality. That's how you will configure your sync. That's how end users will configure their sync. And that is the end of everything applicable to a standard user. Now, if you're an admin, you'll want to stick around for a few more minutes here. I'm going to actually show you how to preset and lock settings for your end users. And you're going to do that at different levels here, and I'm pointing at the navigation in your hierarchy. So let's take a look at what that is. So your organization is your account. So this is your subscription, which is what you're paying LinkPoint 360 for. These are the sync jobs that are included in your account. You can go in and edit these, and the first I'm going to show you at this organization level is you can actually completely disable a sync. Best use case is there are companies who do not want their users ever syncing contacts. They don't even want their end users to know contact sync is an option. So you can leave it off by default and see this is checked, but I'm mousing over it and I'm getting this little lock to the left. If you have something disabled and you click this lock, it will actually, and let's click save, remove or hide the option altogether for your end user. So they won't have access to contact sync. They won't even know that contact sync is an option for them. And I can show you this. Let's pull this open in a new window. Now that we've hidden that, the contact sync is no longer even an option down on the user level in the sync jobs table, where a couple of minutes ago, it certainly was there. So that's the first trick. Let's navigate to subscription. So subscription is going to show you not just some of the billing details on your account, it's also going to show you the term of your subscription. Joe Burns here just signed up, so he's running that 14-day free trial. Paying customers, you'll see a paid license type, the total number of licenses that you purchased, and the term for that purchase. Subscriptions contain profiles, which are groups of users. So when you have a list of profiles, you'll see them here as well as in the profile section. And if you would like to group your users in any way other than admins and standard users, you can certainly do that. These are just the two defaults. The best reason or best use case for using profiles other than the default configuration is going to be grouping them based on similar sync setups. So for example, if I have a sales team that I want calendar sync to sync everything for, I'm going to select the all mode for calendar sync. I'll create a sales team profile. And then when I go to configure the sync on the profile level, which I'll show you, all of your sales users will run their sync for calendar the way you said. Now, why our profile is great? Well, I can create a separate profile and call it the marketing profile and say, only sync the calendar items where there's a match for those users. Because marketing folks have a lot of internal meetings, they have a lot of other things going on, but occasionally they'll interact with customers. And when that happens, you're going to want that recorded back to Salesforce. So you can group users based on how they're going to use each sync differently, and then you can preset everything for them on a group or a profile level. You can manage your hosts or predefine host data at a subscription level. You can also preset your sync settings at the subscription level. Any changes you make to this section for hosts or this section for sync job on the subscription level will apply to anything below it. So it will apply to all of your profiles, whether you have 2 or 22, and it will apply to all of your users, whether you have 2 or 200. So again, just keeping in mind from a maintenance perspective, anything you know applies globally. That's great to do at the organization or the subscription level. Anything where you're sort of making distinctions between behavior, you're going to want to do at that profile level. So I'm going to go to the profiles here, and you can see here are the 2 profiles that I have with my system, and we'll go to standard user. When you have users, they will populate here in a list for you to see who is part of that profile. But what I want to show you are 2 things, and the first is on the host for Salesforce. I'm at the profile level. I'm going to click edit. And what I can do here is I can actually establish the Salesforce login URL credentials up front for the users. What's great about that is most users have no idea what their login URL is supposed to be, especially if you're running a custom one. So at LinkPoint, for example, I believe it's something like this. So you can key this in. Then if you mouse over, because I'm an admin and I'm at a higher level in our system, I get the locks. So I can set this up for every user in this profile, and they don't have to think about it when they actually go to authenticate to Salesforce. So that's particularly helpful there. Another thing is for partner communities. So if you have users that maybe you have a group of internal reps that you're going to put in a sales profile, but then you have some sort of external team that uses partner communities in Salesforce, you can come in here and actually pre-populate this as well. So again, you can enter that information. If you know your partner community ID ahead of time, most Salesforce admins do, most end users of the communities do not. You can add all of that in here and then you can lock it down. So it's making the end user setup process just that more efficient. Again, the other thing you can do is set up your sync job data. So we can go to the email sync. I can decide I want everybody syncing their emails all the time and lock it. I can choose the record type that I want them going in as and lock it. I can enforce attachments and I can lock it. Not only will this set a default, which you can do if you don't lock, you just click, but the locks, again, will prevent users from being able to override those settings. So if you're looking for consistent data workflows across teams, for reporting, for compliance, not just coming in and selecting a checkbox, but also locking that will ensure that's how the data moves between the systems. Again, because I'm an admin, I'm at the profile level, I can go to the ignore emails, and I can add extra domains. Maybe we have a secondary domain and I want to make sure those are excluded, and I can click save. Now when a user comes in, they'll see multiple listed here and they won't be able to edit them because you made the change at the higher level. So again, really great for user maintenance, for keeping your content, for keeping your CRM as clean and as accurate as possible. From a user perspective, when you're an admin and you create the account, you will be the only user. When you need to add your users, so let's say you've taken the tour of Cloud Edition, you've preset all of your sync settings, and now you're ready to go ahead and bring your users in to one or more profiles, you'll come here and you'll click import. And this is super simple. You can search here in the search box based on first name, last name, or even Salesforce profile name. So I'm going to enter in a name here. And when you click the magnifying glass, it'll show you all the results that match your search. I only have one Sally, so we'll go ahead and select her. And you can run your search and find all of the people that you want to add to a single profile. So it's one at a time. You can batch add people, but you're working with one profile at a time. So you'll end up with a list over here. This count will tell you how many licenses you have remaining. As a trial user, you get 5, and the admin counts as the first one. Paid customers, your numbers will vary. And then you're going to specify which profile to add them to. Likely you've already set your profiles up. You know how each group is going to need to sync. In this case, I know Sally is going to be a standard user. I've already set her sync for her, and I would click this import selected button. What that does is it sends an email to everyone we've selected, in this case Sally. She will get the email, she will be asked to click a link, and she will start the process back at the wizard that we began today's training on, where she will establish a Cloud Edition password, and she will also set in her Salesforce credentials and Exchange credentials. And again, if you've already preset the sync for that profile for her, she will be done, everything will be set, and the system will begin running once she has authenticated everything. Lastly, for our admins, we're going to take a look at the dashboard. So I've gone ahead and clicked the home button, and when you first log in moving forward, it'll land you here. We do have links to resources in our knowledge base. We also have a link to the dashboard. Now, since this is a new account, I don't have a whole lot of data to work with, but once you've enabled sync jobs and you've added your users, you can check back here to review account metrics, adjust filters, and even generate a user report to monitor system use. So this screen gives you a lot of helpful information. It also demonstrates the power of the system for companies who are moving either from no email integration or from something that's a little bit more manual to a consistent, possibly pre-configured and locked down automatic sync format. You're going to see thousands and thousands of items have been moved by the system without much end user interaction, depending on the sync modes you choose. The user status is really helpful. It'll show you if people are not connected. Some users get the invite emails and they don't follow them, they don't click it, or they started filling out that wizard and halfway through they got distracted. So it will identify for you if you're missing people along the way. You can run your own user reports, as I mentioned. So at any time you can come in here and look at users based on the entire account. You can look based on particular profiles. You can filter based on certain time frames. So if you're onboarding and you're looking to check on who's connected in the last week or who may not have connected in the last week, you can do that. If you're interested in seeing maybe the system's been running for a while and you want to see how many items everyone has that are unresolved for a particular team so that you can see who's creating their contacts in Salesforce and who may not be, so emails are not syncing, you can also set those parameters here. When you click this button, the system will initiate the report, it will process, and it will email you a link to download the file once it's ready. So that concludes today's training for LinkPoint Connect Cloud Edition. I know that there was a lot of information in here, and it's even more flexible than I went into here. So if you're interested in more resources to learn about the system or how to further customize the software, you can check out our online knowledge base. We have step-by-step instructions, quick tips, and a few shorter videos that go into the features in more depth. If you have any questions about your account or your current configuration, you can always contact your account executive. And if you have questions about best practices or are interested in further training, please feel free to reach out to customer success at linkpoint360.com, and our team would be happy to help you.